Thailand welcomes all workers who legally enter the kingdom for the purpose of working. You can trust and be sure that in Thailand you would not be defrauded by any criminals. You will be guided and protected as well as Thai national workers. Migrant workers who intend to work in Thailand should understand general regulations as follows. 1. Entry to Thailand for working through the MOU system. Migrant workers should realize that the non-LA visa type is for unskilled labor and maids only. Example photo of the visa is attached. 2. To enter Thailand through Thai immigration checkpoints, the migrant workers have to be instructed at the post-arrival and reintegration center for migrant workers. There are 4 centers at the moment, such as Tak Province, Sakao Province, Nong Khai Province, and Mukdahan Province. These reintegration centers are government institutes providing knowledge for migrant workers, targeting security concerns, and streamlining the border clearance process for migrant workers before entering Thailand. These institutes allow migrant workers to wait for their employers or to return to their native countries. Here, migrant workers can verify and exercise their labor rights. It is a center where an agreement between an employer and the migrant worker can be established. This can be an employment contract stating that the migrant worker shall work in a position, receive salary and benefits as per the employment contract. 3. The e-work permit can be issued for a migrant worker who has passed training. The e-work permit has to be specified for the worker's name, position, workplace, and employer. The e-work permit has to always be with a migrant worker. 4. Once the migrant worker has entered the kingdom, his or her employer must complete a health check for the migrant worker within 30 days, 30, of the day that the work permit had been issued. 5. The expenses that the migrant worker must pay are passport fees, health checkup fees, work permit fees, and other expenses. The employer can deduct these expenses from their wages or overtime payments or holiday working payments up to 10% of the monthly wage the migrant worker receives. The migrant worker who entered Thailand through the MOU system has to be registered in the Social Security system. Through this process, he or she will be protected by the Act on Social Security, circa BE 2533, and the Act on Compensation, circa BE 2537, as follows. 1. Social Security Fund. The employer must register its employee and acquire insurance for that employee in the Social Security Fund within 30 days, 30, of employing that worker. The employer and employee must pay a Social Security fee, which is 5% of the base calculated wage. The base of calculation should not be lower than 1,650 baht or higher than 15,000 baht. In addition, the government will also pay a part of a subsidized amount into the security fund. There are 7 cases covered by the Social Security Fund: sickness, injury, disability, death, giving birth, taking care of children, supporting the elderly, and unemployment, which depends on conditions and period of subsidiary payment. 2. Compensation fund. The employer must pay 0.2 to 1% of the worker's wage to the compensation fund, depending on the risk the employer's businesses represent. The migrant worker will be protected from the first day he or she works for the employer. The compensation fund covers injury, disability, death, or disappearance. Exceptions for migrant workers. Any worker who works as a house worker, such as a gardener, fisherman, or seasonal animal farming. Any worker who works just for a temporary period or seasonal work. Any worker who works as a hawker or in a stall. Those workers will not be covered by the compensation fund, but covered by the health insurance system of the Ministry of Public Health. Working practices. Working safely, such as understanding the use of equipment. The worker should always study and follow safety instructions provided by the company. For example, the ban on smoking around flammable substances. Workers should always study safety instructions and signs when working in areas at high altitude with the potential for electric shock or in the case of fire hazards. Workers should be cautious when entering a high-risk area. Use the right equipment to prevent any unnecessary danger and protect themselves against chemical hazards. Laws, prohibitions, and relevant penalties. The Labor Protection Act, circa BE 2541, states that 1. Regular working hours are no more than 8 hours per day or no more than 48 working hours per week. 2. Break hours are not less than 1 hour per day. 3. Days off. Weekly days off are not less than 1 day per week. Traditional holidays are no less than 13 days per year. Annual holidays are no less than 6 days per year. Days for leave. Sick leave can only be applied if the worker is sick. If more than 3 days of sick leave are requested, the employee shall submit a medical certificate. Business leave can be applied in accordance with the regulations of the workplace. Maternity leave can be applied up to a maximum of 90 days for one pregnancy. 5. Overtime work should not be more than 36 hours in 1 week. 6. Work compensation. Wage. A worker shall not receive a wage less than the minimum wage. Wages on holidays. A worker shall receive their wage even on traditional holidays or weekly holidays. Wage on sick leave. A worker shall receive the wage on sick leave for no more than 30 days per year. Wage on business leave days. A worker shall receive the wage in accordance with the working agreement or regulations. Wages for maternity leave. A worker shall receive their wages no more than 45 days per pregnancy. Wages for working on holidays. A monthly worker who has a right to get wages on a holiday shall receive 1 times more their standard pay than he or she generally receives. and a temporary worker who doesn't have the right to receive a wage on holidays shall get twice more than he or she generally receives. Wages for working overtime. On standard working days, a worker shall receive salary at 1.5 times an hourly wage according to his or her working hours. Wages for working overtime on holidays. A worker shall receive 3 times their hourly wage in accordance with his or her working hours. 7. Compensation. If an employer dismisses a worker without misconduct, the worker is entitled to compensation as follows. An employee who worked continuously for 120 days but less than 1 year shall receive their final wages for 30 days. An employee who worked continuously for at least 1 year but less than 3 years shall receive a final wage of 90 days. Employees who worked continuously for 3 years but less than 6 years shall receive final wages worth 180 days. Employees who worked continuously for 6 years but less than 10 years shall receive a final wage of 240 days. Employees who worked continuously for more than 10 years shall receive a final wage compensation of 300 days. A migrant worker who lives in the kingdom for more than 90 days who wishes to request a re-entry permit into the kingdom should comply with the Immigration Act, circa BE 2522, as follows. 1. Practices for staying in the kingdom for more than 90 days. For a migrant worker who receives permission to stay temporarily in the kingdom, if the stay in the kingdom is more than 90 days, he or she must report that his or her address to the immigration officer every 90 days. 2. Requesting a re-entry permit for entering into the kingdom. A migrant worker who enters the kingdom with the temporary resident type, once they acquire permission to stay in the kingdom and intend to travel abroad, they must apply for a re-entry permit before leaving the kingdom. To apply for a re-entry permit, please go to the same immigration office you use to report yourself every 90 days. Procedures and practices. 1. Verify TM.8 documents, the application for re-entry permit, passport, and fees. 2. Review your rights before applying for re-entry into the kingdom. 3. Your information will be registered into the re-entry system software. 4. An officer issues an official receipt of the fee and keeps 2 copies as evidence. The officer gives original receipt to the migrant worker. 5. An officer stamps the re-entry permit into the migrant worker's passport and in the TM.8 document as evidence of returning the passport and the receipt to the migrant worker. Royal Decree on the Management of Foreign Workers, circa BE 2560 and its additionals. Prohibitions for migrant workers. 1. Do not work without an official work permit. 2. Do not work any other type of work you have no right to do. Migrant workers can only work for the type of work required by laws that allow migrant workers to work. Facts and regulations. A migrant worker who is permitted to work has to report to work within 15 days from the date of employment as according to section 64/2. 2. A migrant worker who works for an employer and leaves before completing the contract does not have the right to work with other employers unless Section 51. The migrant worker has proved to the officers that the reason for leaving was caused by the misconduct of the employer, or the migrant worker has already paid the caused damages to the employer. 3. A migrant worker who leaves before completing a work contract and 3.1 cannot prove to the officer that the reason for leaving was the employer's mistake or has not paid damages to the employer, leaves the employer with the right to send the migrant worker back to his or her original country, as according to Section 53. 4. In case a migrant worker has a right to change the employer, he or she must start work for the new employer within 30 days from the day he or she left their previous employer. 5. In case a migrant worker doesn't have the right to change their employer, or does have the right but doesn't work for a new employer in 30 days, the work permit of the migrant worker and their permission to stay in the kingdom will be terminated, according to Immigration Law, Section 53. 6. Actions if following cases happened with an already employed migrant worker. 6.1. An employer terminated the employment of the migrant worker. 6.2. The migrant worker requests to terminate the employment contract with the employer. 6.3. A migrant worker leaves their work for any other reasons. The employer has to inform the authorized person who enrolled the migrant worker and the officer within 7 days of the aforementioned issues happening. In case of 6.1 and 6.3, if the reason for leaving was not caused by a misconduct of the migrant worker, and the worker would like to work for another employer, the authorized person who received permission to enroll the worker may arrange another working agreement with a new employer within 30 days of the day the previous employment was terminated. The working period with a new employer, however, should not exceed the validity of the original work contract, as according to Section 50. Faults and penalties. 1. A migrant worker who works without a valid work permit or works beyond the rights of the work permit is violating Section 8 and will be fined 5,000 to 50,000 Thai baht. 2. A migrant worker who holds a valid work permit but doesn't inform officers about his or her employer, working place of employer, and type of work is violating Section 64/2 and will be fined up to 20,000 baht. 3. A migrant worker who gets permission to work but is unable to present a valid work permit to the officer or registrar is violating Section 68 and will be fined up to 5,000 baht. Recommendations for working in Thailand. 1. Do not violate laws. 2. Always carry a valid work permit. 3. Use public services in a good manner. 4. Do not falsify official government documents. 5. Do not trust anyone who claims to be able to support staying or working in Thailand or processing documents. 6. Workers should learn the official Thai language or at least a local Thai language. Practices when a work contract is complete. When a migrant worker has completed their contract, it is the responsibility of the employer or the company who has permission to enroll the migrant worker to send the migrant worker back to their own country, unless the work contract will be renewed or the migrant worker will work for a new employer with a 2-year contract and is able to renew the contract for another 2 years. If the work contract reaches a maximum of 4 years, the migrant worker must return to his or her country for 30 days before returning to Thailand to work again. Getting help in Thailand. There are 10 migrant workers assistance centers at a provincial department of employment in Samut Sakhon, Surat Thani, Songkhla, Samut Prakan, Chonburi, Ranong, Chiang Mai, Nakhon Ratchasima, Khon Kaen, and Tak provinces. The centers will support, suggest, and provide knowledge to migrant workers for working for an employer or an organization. It also cooperates with other related institutes to assist the migrant workers who have any work issue, as in procuring a temporary stay for them while they are waiting for support. Embassies of your country in Thailand. Emergency Royal Thai Police Headquarters Hotline. Dial 191. Emergency Hotline. Dial 1669. Ministry of Labor Hotline 1506. Unfair Labor Practices Complaint. Visit www.labour.go.th or call hotline number 1546. Violation hotline number 1377. Suspicion or witnessed human trafficking hotline number 1300. To address any problems of a migrant worker, please visit doe.go.th/HELPME. To repeat, that is www.do.go.th/helpme. Finally, please be confident to work in Thailand. Migrants' human rights will be protected.